This video is about understanding Richard Gula's reading on forming one's conscience. And so he starts off by discussing the difference between a psychological superego and a moral conscience. And so that superego is this external authority figure that subjects me to how to act. And so that superego is on the outside of me, it is external to me and my choices. And I then am compelled to act according to the rules of the superego. So think of Pinocchio having to act according to the rules of Jiminy Cricket. And so as Pinocchio submits to Jiminy Cricket's superego of how to act, we all know how that turns out. Pinocchio becomes a donkey. The second part is that moral conscience. How do we progress from being influenced by a superego towards having a moral conscience? Well, that is becoming internalized, the conscience becoming self-directing. So it becomes within us, and we can accurately guide ourselves to do right and not wrong. It's when I commit my freedom to what I value, to what is good. And this results after a process. So what is this process that we're going to be talking about? How do I do good and not evil? Form your conscience. This formation of conscience process is a process of discernment, discerning right and wrong, good and evil. The first part of this process is conscience one or synderesis, just the beginning part. That is this basic tendency within us to know and to do the good. And this often results from the superego. Superegos tend to want to help us. But we only know generally good, very generally, not in a specific sense, how to act in this instance. So we have this basic orientation to the good, but we can disagree over right and wrong. The second part of the formation or the conscience process to get us to this moral conscience is conscience two, and that's this moral science aspect. And it's this process. Think scientific method, observation. This process of discovering the particular good which ought to be done or the evil to be avoided in this particular instance. And so this is when we form our conscience, the second part, progressing from the superego towards a moral conscience. And this is when we form, inform, and transform our conscience. And how we do that in each situation is through accurate perception of the act and the issue that we're actually going to be doing, and right moral reasoning. Continuing on with conscience two, each act, in order to achieve this accurate perception of the act and right moral reasoning, we need to form and inform our conscience, which will ultimately transform it by seeking sources of moral wisdom. Think religious teaching or civil teaching, civil law, and human experience. These various sources of moral wisdom that will help us understand more accurately how to perceive the act and also what to do in that situation. And lastly, conscience three, it's when we proceed from this thinking about it, this process stage where we are merely doing our homework, to a specific judgment of what I must do in this situation. It's perceiving, moving from perception and reasoning towards action. And this is the key. This is when we act, after we've done our homework. And when we've done our homework well, our conscience is inviolable. And I must always follow my rightly formed conscience.